Okay, I'm going to do the code here for adding an obstacle. So at this point, I'm going to assume that you've already gone back to the previous stage of making the ship move, and you got your ship, your graphic, your PNG, the link, and replaced my link that I provide you with. Also, you got your background. So with that said, let's get started. We're going to have a couple of new variables here, like I think it's 4 of them, in order to handle our obstacle. So first, we're going to start off with a obstacle color, which we will go over real quick to. In fact, these parentheses don't even. Oops, those parentheses are unnecessary. Colorhex.com on their latest palettes, and if I'm looking at my colors right now, which my ship's blue, background's kind of very light purple, keeping that in mind. I want my obstacle to contrast with that. And so, something in the brown range might be nice for me in this case. I think I'll grab that brown right there, copy that, and come back here. Now I've got my obstacle color set. Those spaces are unnecessary, but that double quotation mark is necessary. All right. Now, obstacle color is set. We're also going to need a variable, and I'm going to go with caps lock here on this because I want these to be all capitals separated by a underscore. Obstacle width, and we're going to set that to 30. And obstacle height, which we're going to set to 100. All right. So run button, everything's still working. Haven't broken any of the rules. Then lastly, we're going to need our obstacle game object. And for the moment, I'm going to leave this just empty, but I'll put a little comment out here. The obstacle game object. In the same way that this variable vehicle represents our ship. That variable vehicle represents the ship right there. So it's got the link to the graphic, and we set its position, and we're affecting its position on the screen. We're also going to need a game object called obstacle. Okay. Now, nothing's going to change in our start function. But in our setup function, we are going to call a function. And the function we're going to call in our setup function is called add obstacles. We'll find that function further down the screen. So make sure you put that function call in right there after the comment, create the obstacles. And then moving down right here in our, we're not going to, first things first. Let's go down to add obstacles. Let's add an obstacle. Let's get an obstacle in the game. It's kind of fun how this all unfolds. So our obstacle, for the time being, is going to be a rectangle object. And so whenever we create a rectangle object, we need to feed it a width and a height. And we are going to feed it the obstacle width for its width and the obstacle height for its height. Put that back there. Make a couple of new lines here, move the curly brace down. Now we got some things we need to do to this obstacle. We need to set its color. And the color we're going to set it to is our obstacle color. And the setting of the position of the obstacle is going to be a function call to this function right here that says set obstacle position. So I'm going to copy that whole function name right there. And a function call to that function is going to set the obstacle's position, because there's some work that has to be done to determine exactly where we're going to position it at. Because we want to position the obstacle at a random Y position along this side of the screen and then scroll it onto the screen. We're actually going to be setting it off screen initially. But once we make the obstacles move, it will move smoothly onto the screen. When it gets to the other side, it'll move smoothly off the screen and wrap around to some new location. And that's why this function exists. This function gives us the new location to put our obstacle at. We'll get to that in just a little bit, because I want to put the obstacle on the screen. Then we're going to have to tag our object is obstacle. So this is a way of labeling a game object. So we're going to label, I didn't spell label very well, label the obstacle dot is obstacle. This is going to help us to identify what we might have hit when we start doing collision checking. Lastly, to make this obstacle appear on the screen, we're going to put in the add obstacle. Now I run it right now, and there's my obstacle. My obstacle's up in the top left corner. And that's because if you don't give JavaScript a position to put the obstacle at, by default, it will put the obstacle at 0, 0. So the top left corner of our rectangle sets the position for the rectangle, and that top left corner just so happens to be sitting there at 0, 0. Remember, positive X goes this way, positive Y goes down the screen, different from your math class. All right, now let's get our obstacles position set. So we're going to skip move obstacles for the moment and come down here. And this is how it's going to work. We're going to generate a random Y position, and then we're going to set the obstacle's position to be just off screen, exactly off screen. So like the left edge of the obstacle lines up with the edge of the screen, and then we'll set it into motion and it'll move on screen. So this Y position, how we're going to generate this? Well, we're going to have a variable called random Y, and it will be equal to randomizer dot next integer. And we're going to start from a low value of 0, because as you can see, when the obstacle's Y position is 0, it's completely on the screen. You can see it right now, right up here. It's at 0, 0. Y is 0. That's when Y is 0, the obstacle will be completely on screen. But it's high value. If I set it to screen height, then the obstacle, it is possible, it would spawn only partially on screen. So I have to take into account, I got to subtract out from the screen height the obstacle height. And so that's going to guarantee that I get a value that's going to guarantee that the obstacle is on the screen. And then I'm going to set that obstacle's position. And we're going to set it to, for its 0 value, screen width, the whole width of the screen. And for its Y value, the random Y. And that's going to put our obstacle, now when I hit the run code button here, it appears that we have no obstacle. We can't see any obstacle. It appears that way, but trust me, it's there. If you want to take a look at it, peek at it, subtract 5 from the screen width. Or better yet, maybe subtract 15 so you can really make it stand out. And when I click run, look at it over there. Can you see the obstacle? Half of it is peaking. When I hit run again, new position, run again. You see that set obstacle position function is generating a random Y position, and so the obstacle is getting positioned in different Y values. X value is always going to be screen width minus 15. Something in the neighborhood of, what's 400 minus 15? 385 for an X value. All right, so now we're getting random positions. Let's take out that minus 15. We don't want our obstacles to be spawning already on the screen. When the game starts, we want them to be loaded just right off the edge of the screen over here. Now we have to take care of making these things move. Well, to make the obstacles move, up here in the game function, we need to be calling the move obstacles function. Remember, the game function gets turned on by the timer. The timer says call the game function every delay milliseconds. In our case, our delay is 40 milliseconds. And so every 40 milliseconds, the game function gets called. It's about 25 frames per second. So 25 times a second, every second, this function gets called, and it's going to move our ship, depending on whether we got our mouse down or our mouse up. And now we're going to tell it to move the obstacles. All right, let's get the obstacles moving. This will be obstacle.move, and we're not going to change the Y position for our obstacle. Whatever our Y position for our obstacle is, we're gonna keep that Y position, but we are going to that. Come on, Robert, find it. There we go. So it's going to be negative speed. I'm going to hit the enter key so I get all my capitals. That's my speed variable. And 0 for Y. Now, our obstacle will move. When I click run, there's our obstacle. It's moving. Here it comes, and there it goes, and it's gone. It's gone forever. Because our obstacle is just doing what it was told. It's being told to move. So when we get to this point, we want to wrap the obstacle when it goes off screen. When the obstacle slides all the way over here to the left side of the screen, as soon as it goes off screen, we want to wrap it. We want to make it reappear on the other side in a new Y position and come back on screen. So what we're going to look at here is if our obstacle dot get X is trying to be less than negative our obstacle width. If that's true, if our obstacle is trying to be, the X value is trying to be less than negative 30, because right now our obstacle width is 30. It's going to change later when we make enemy ships. So when the obstacle is in that position, we need to then set the obstacle at a random Y position. So we're going to set our obstacle position, and that's all there is to it. The set obstacle position function already does that job. When it gets called, it's going to generate a random Y, and it's going to set the obstacle's position correctly over there back on the other side of the screen in the random Y position. So here we go. Let's see, our obstacle is going to wrap now. Went around, hey, it's down there at the bottom, down here at the bottom now. And now it's up here because we're getting a random Y position. Each time it wraps, we get a random Y position, and our obstacle's now in a new position. All right. And that takes care of the code for add obstacle. We defined a few new variables, an obstacle color, an obstacle width, and an obstacle height. We also defined an obstacle game object. In our setup function, we added the obstacle to the screen. In our game function, we made the obstacles move. And then down here, adding the obstacle creates the rectangle. It sets the position of the obstacle using a function call to get a random Y position. And while it may not seem important right now, later when we're doing collision checking, this line's really important. When we tagged, when we labeled the obstacle is obstacle. It's going to help us to identify when we hit something that we're looking to hit. And lastly, here, our move obstacles here moves our obstacle using our speed variable. And if the X value of our obstacle tries to be less than its width off screen, then we set the obstacle position again and we get a random Y. Obstacle's position back on the right side of the screen. And when set obstacle position does its job, we get a random position and everything's flowing. Well, that's it. Thank you. We'll see you in class.